Okay, everything's working? Okay, good. Hello, virtual MileHiCon. I'm Carrie Vaughn, and I'd like to read to you from my brand new novel. It'll be coming out next year in June. It's called Questland. And rather than tell you too much about it, I'm just going to dive right in with chapter 2. We've already met main character, literature professor Adrienne Cox. And in chapter 2, she's about to get an offer she can't refuse. Chapter 2, Wisdom Save. Outside the Humanities building on a narrow lane that was meant for university maintenance carts, a shining black town car was parked. The severely prim woman from the video chat stepped out of the passenger side. Not an AI then. I should have held out for another 10 grand. Maybe I should have been bothered that I had such a predictable price, but it wasn't for me, it was for the department. I could go to a stupid meeting. I put on a bright smile. Hi, I'm Addie Cox. It's nice to meet you. Thank you for agreeing to this meeting, Professor. Please. She opened the car's back door and gestured inside, which seemed dark and cavernous. She still hadn't told me her name. I climbed in and the door closed behind me with a soft click, like an airlock ceiling. The driver was male, dressed in a formal dark suit, and didn't glance back at me. Maybe I should have insisted on meeting in public. This suddenly looked like the first chapter in a lurid horror scenario. The woman leaned over the back seat and handed me a tablet. I need you to read and sign this non-disclosure agreement. It's straightforward, requiring only that you not discuss anything you're about to learn in this meeting. What if I don't want to sign? We'll pull over right now. But there's the grant to think about, Did she think she could just buy me off? Well, yes, I suppose she did. She wasn't wrong, and she worked for a company that always got what it wanted. I just couldn't figure out why it wanted me. The NDA was short, saying exactly what she'd explained. I wouldn't talk about what went on at the meeting unless required to by a court of law, and wasn't that comforting. I signed because ultimately, even apart from the grant money, I wanted to see what this was about. Can't you give me a hint? I said, handing the tablet back to her. Everything will be explained soon, which was exactly what I should have known she would say. After 20 minutes, we ended up in downtown Boulder at the St. Julian, the city's nicest hotel. Formally, the prim woman opened the car door and guided me to the entrance. The doorman snapped to attention. So at least there were witnesses now. After a ride in an elevator requiring the touch of a special chip card, we arrived at an expansive suite. As in, the elevator opened directly into the suite, a posh living room with clean white sofas, glass coffee tables, and vast windows looking out over the city. I'd only ever seen this kind of room in movies. 2 men waited. One of them was Silicon Valley tech guru Harris Lang himself, founder of Lang Analytics, inventor of a revolutionary telecom device that nobody understood, founder of a private company flinging satellites into orbit. Wasn't a month went by that he didn't have his picture on the cover of some magazine or didn't get interviewed in some news show about tech trends with a steel gray buzz cut and rectangular wire-rimmed glasses. Technically, I had seen him in person once before. From the back of an auditorium filled with a couple of thousand people, he'd been a tiny shadow on stage, so I'd mostly watch his speech on one of the big screens, which was basically like watching him on TV. My boyfriend at the time had been awestruck with the man and dragged me to the presentation. Everyone loved the enigmatic Harris Lang, brilliant Harris Lang, saving the world with carbon sequestration and space junk mitigation. For the kind of person who had big dreams and unshakable faith in technology, Lang was inspiring. Me, I would never trust that just one person could single-handedly save the world. Close up, Lang seemed thin, the kind of thin from not eating enough rather than working out. His face was lined. He seemed tired, older than his 50-some years. He wore his trademark gray turtleneck, dark jeans, and had an earbud in one ear. Sitting on the sofa, studying a tablet, he didn't even look up when we entered. To the side of the sofa stood a man in his early 40s, muscular and square-jawed, with sun-browned skin. He studied me with dark eyes like he was peeling back layers. He wore slacks and a suit jacket over a t-shirt, but they looked like a costume on him. He made me nervous. The bad kind of nervous, like when a door slammed or someone set off a firecracker. The kind of nervous that made me want to hide under a table. I was very out of place here in my oversized cardigan, peasant skirt, and ballet flats. Usually I felt comfortable in my clothes, but here I was an oddity. I self-consciously brushed at my hair, short rumpled curls around my ears. We waited until Harris Lang finally looked up, set aside his tablet, and rose. Should I bow, look away, introduce myself? I froze. Professor Adrian Cox, it's very good of you to come. I'm Harris Lang. How strange that he knew my name. In the real world, no one like him should ever notice someone like me, but here we were. He'd bribed me into his domain. Lang had a New England drawl to his voice. Lang Analytics headquarters, U.S. headquarters at least, was on the other side of the country. He hadn't flown here just to meet me, had he? That didn't seem right. Call me Addie, I said, and started to extend my hand for shaking, but his remained clasped in front of him, so no, there would be no handshaking. Nice to meet you. I glanced at the man who looked like he was standing guard and waited for an introduction. It didn't come. Please, have a seat. Tea, coffee, something stronger. He smiled thinly, making a joke he knew was perfunctory. Now that I got a better look at him, the smile seemed strained. He had puffy eyes like he'd been losing sleep. Nothing like how he looked on slick magazine covers. Tea? Black, no sugar. The prim woman marched off to the sweets bar. I glanced again at the other man. He loomed, like he might put everyone here in a headlock any minute now. Lang returned to the sofa. This must seem strange. So I'll come straight to it. You're here because I need a consultant with exactly your expertise. Like you're doing one of those cable documentaries and you need an expert interview or something? That was the only thing I could think of, but surely Lang wouldn't arrange something like that personally. He had people for that. The military man, he had to be military, pressed his lips together, hiding a smile. Lang didn't smile. No, Professor, I'm afraid not. Let's see, this is turning out to be much harder to explain than I was expecting. The heart of it has been top secret for so long, I'm not used to saying it out loud. The assistant brought over the cup of tea, complete with saucer, and I almost resented the distraction of having to take hold of it. Maybe you should just show her, the tough guy said, nodding at the tablet. He had a steady, commanding voice. Of course he did. Ah, yes, Lang said. Professor, this is Captain Octavio Torres. He'll be leading your team, assuming you say yes. Team? What team? Hi, I murmured at him. Torres nodded. Professor? Lang held out the tablet so I could see the screen, which showed a picture of a unicorn. Not a drawing, but what looked like a photograph of an impossibly lovely white horse, slender with delicate legs, a luxurious mane and tail, and a pearlescent horn spiraling from its forehead. It looked out at me with dark, liquid eyes. I wanted to hug it. This is a special effect, I said, uncertain. People had been retouching and altering photos of horses for years to get images like this. No, Professor, he said. It isn't. I didn't understand. So this is what, some kind of surgical procedure where... Insula Mirabilis, he said with breathless awe, so the name sounded like a prayer. The wonderful island. And was that a tear at the corner of his eye? He blinked and it was gone. The self-possessed tech guru, in command of the entire world, returned. I had an idea, a vision. I hired the best people, set out my goals very clearly. I'm sure you're familiar with the expression, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. Of course, that was Arthur C. Clarke. Well, I set about proving it. He swiped to the next picture, which showed a great gray castle, incongruous against the backdrop of a northwestern rainforest. Huge blocks of stone made up its thick walls, and a round tower reached to a great height. It was something out of a fairy tale. The next photo showed a village of timber frame cottages with thatched roofs, and the one after that featured what had to be a dragon. Not big, not a big dragon, but around the size of a Great Dane. A sinewy, snake-like lizard, rust red, with spindly legs, bat-like wings, and a mouthful of teeth. It crouched in a barred cage, reaching a claw out for a chunk of meat, held by someone just out of frame. It's some kind of robot. No, Lang said. It eats. It bleeds. At this he smiled, the sly, proud smile of a child who has caught his first lizard and built a particularly ornate terrarium for it. This wasn't an amusement park with plaster buildings and animatronics. This didn't look like a Renaissance fair or museum exhibit. It was real. Where is this place? What is it? What's it for? Why? I ran out of words. Lang took his tablet back and scrolled through more pictures, gazing fondly at the images. I set out to build a fantasy world. It would be fully immersive, a game, a resort, an extreme vacation all wrapped up into one. And I did it. Wizard worlds, sci-fi franchise theme parks, they'll look like cardboard dioramas compared to my park. There's nothing else like it. He kept saying I, as if a project like this wouldn't take hundreds, thousands of people to implement it, design it, build it, and keep it all running. Lang certainly hadn't laid any of the stonework on that castle himself. Then again, he'd had the idea, he'd fronted the money. Why shouldn't it be his? So why did he look so sad? But, I prompted, because this was all leading to a but. Lang scowled and turned away. Torres answered instead. Lang Analytics lost contact with the production team. What does that mean? We've been cut off. Lang started pacing, hand on his head, pulling nervously at his short hair. We haven't been able to get any aerial pictures of the island. They're blocking our communications. No one who wasn't already there has set foot on the island in months. How do you lose contact with a whole island? Can't you send a boat? Or, Torres said, a Coast Guard cutter was destroyed trying to get through. There's some kind of energy field. A what? I suddenly had a bad feeling about this. A worse feeling. And the cutter crashed into it, all hands lost. How many is all hands? I asked softly. 10, Torres said. Lang made a sharp, frustrated motion with his hand. This is a mutiny, a rebellion. Someone on the production staff staged a coup. Maybe the entire production staff. I don't know who's involved, what's been happening. I'm cut out. His arms fell limp at his sides. This was a man not used to being cut out of anything. He had no plan. Pieces started to fit together. Way too many pieces. I glanced at Torres. You want someone to go in and take back the island. That's why you need what are you, Army, Marines? Navy SEAL, he said, retired. I'm an independent contractor now. An actual real-life mercenary, almost as fantastical as that unicorn. Shouldn't you be calling the police or the military or something? Lang said evenly, I need to secure my investment before other entities become involved. If he could get there before any outside agency, he could keep the whole thing from being impounded. He could control the narrative. That seemed on brand for him. That still doesn't explain why you need me. I'm just a literature professor. I figured we might need a guide, Torres said, someone who can play the game. Lang said, we've been out of contact with the island for several months now. We have no idea what the design team has accomplished. Dragons may be the least of it. You'll be very well compensated, of course. My stomach twisted in knots. As fantastic as this island must be, as curious as I was, I couldn't do it. I just couldn't. You're talking about an assault with guns. Torres definitely looked like someone who knew his way around guns. I set aside the tea I hadn't even tasted. I'm not the right person for this. I'm absolutely the wrong person. There are thousands of other scholars who can help you. I steadied myself so I could explain, but I couldn't get the words out. Thank you very much for thinking of me, but I can't. Lang and Torres exchanged a glance. There was more to this, a lot more, and they weren't telling me. Lang got that sly smile again, the one that said he knew he was in charge here. He wouldn't have it any other way. But Professor, I need you. He didn't. He couldn't. If you did any kind of background check on me, and I know you did, you know why I can't do this. I'm the worst person for this. I squeezed my eyes shut. I could not start crying. Lang said, inexorably and without remorse, yes, you were a student at Westlake High School during the shooting there 15 years ago. 8 students were killed, 10 injured. You watched 2 of your friends die. I'm sorry if I've upset you by bringing up those memories. I didn't believe he was sorry at all. I was very calm when I said, it's taken a lot of therapy to get me to a point where I can even talk about this, but I can't be part of your assault. I can't. I looked at Torres and thought I saw pity there, some level of understanding that Lang and his prim assistant weren't capable of. I started toward the elevator door, stepping around the assistant. Then Lang said, Professor Cox, I'm surprised you haven't yet asked me about Dominic Brand. And there it was, the thing we'd been talking around, the real reason I was here, and the 2 words that could keep me from walking out. Dom was the boyfriend who had dragged me to that Harris Lang talk years ago. Lang had sponsored a prize, one of those X-Prize innovation deals, looking for not just technological revolutions, but cultural revolutions. Dom had been part of a team working on a portable medical containment unit for use in disease outbreaks. Their idea had been to use an energy field, so it could be set up anywhere with the flip of a switch, be impermeable to bacteria and viruses. The team hadn't won the prize, but Dom had gone to work for Lang Analytics. This was right after we broke up, and I hadn't heard from him since. That sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach this whole conversation came from realizing this situation had Dom's fingerprints all over it. He'd kept working on that energy field, on a grand scale, apparently. So, what about Dominic? I murmured, turning. Lang said, Dominic is the head designer on the Mirabilis project. You're right, Professor. 1,000 other scholars could serve the team as a consultant and guide. Perhaps I ought to be talking to someone with military experience rather than someone like you. Someone like me, I said, my tone bitter. Torres interceded, putting up a calming hand and cutting Lang off. The billionaire didn't even look offended. You have the knowledge we need about what we might find on the island, but you're also the one person Brand will talk to. Oh, I wouldn't bet on that. Lang opened his hands. You see, Professor, you are the perfect person for this job. Torres said, I need to ask, do you think Brand is capable of murder? I squeezed my hands into fists so they wouldn't shake. I wouldn't have thought so. He was passionate about his work, maybe even a little crazy. He did some martial arts, but archaic stuff like fencing and archery. We did Ren fairs together. It was a game. Whoever is behind the mutiny on the island, a Coast Guard crew is dead because of them. When we catch them, they'll be charged with murder. Dominic, what the hell are you doing? I realized I was going to say yes, not for the money, but to find out what had happened to Dom. And maybe to see a unicorn. I'm not sure I can do this. I'm not sure either, Torres said frankly, but if seeing you makes Brand hesitate in pulling whatever trigger he might be holding, well, we'll bring you along. If I didn't know better, I'd say it was destiny. All right, that's chapter 2. Once again, the novel is Questland. It will be available June 2021. All things going well, I hope. Thank you for watching my reading, and have a great time at Virtual MileHiCon.